gentlemen, welcome to the first ever Duarte Maggio Sports Podcast. My name is Andrew Maggio. I am one of your co-hosts. I am a former CJLO sports columnist, a current co-host on CJLO's The Game Misconduct on Sundays, and a current staff writer on the Concordian's sports section. To my left is the man in charge of that section.
Yes, I'm Kevin Duarte, the current sports editor of the Concordian. I'm also a contributor at rednationonline.ca. I cover everything that has to do with the Montreal Impact every summer, and I'm looking forward to this new podcast.
Yes, sir. We're going to bring you the latest and greatest in Stingers Nation, Concordia University sports, and the wide world of sports, professional sports to be specific. We'll be bringing you all the latest
Everything.
News, updates,
NHL,
debates,
MLB, NBA,
everything your
MLS.
little heart desires.
Exactly.
So, Kev, let's tell them what exactly to expect on the podcast.
Basically, this podcast, first of its kind, we're going to tackle everything Stingers for the first half of the show. We'll talk about all the teams, what's making news, who's doing what. And then for the second half, we'll be talking about the world of professional sports.
Sounds good. Let's get right to it. Today's headlines. Go, Kevin.
Basically, we have in the Stingers Nation, the wrestling team was highly successful in this weekend's CIS National Championships in London, Ontario.
We'll also be talking about the Montreal Canadiens' hot streak, 11 straight games with a point. By next week, will they still be on that streak, or will they be falling back down to earth? And finally,
well, the Harlem Shake stuff is all coming to an end. We look back and we select our favorites from the teams that did it in the world of sports.
Ken, did you make a Harlem Shake video?
I wish I did, to be honest.
We should do one right here, right now.
Stay tuned,
we
folks.
don't have enough people to do it right now. So if you guys are interested, we will have a Harlem Shake event made on Facebook to christen the podcast. But that might lose a lot of followers.
There's no better way to start that off.
Let's get right to it. The Stingers, basketball, both teams had a pretty solid season. Both made the playoffs. Kevin, let's tell listeners what's been going on the past couple weeks with the men and women basketball teams at Concordia.
Well, we'll start with the women's team. They just came off a championship loss to McGill this Saturday, and it was played at McGill. The Stingers were down for most of the game, but they had a huge fourth quarter comeback that ultimately fell short. Within the last minute, they were behind by a bucket, and then it ended up being a 3-point game by the end of the final buzzer.
And Kayla Barrett, who won the MVP for the women's team, how did she perform in these playoffs and overall in the season?
Basically, this season she was one of the star players for the team. She was the highest. Had the highest average of points per game at 15.2. She was really kind of led the team as the point guard, but they also had some help from Marie-Lise Roy-Villot, who was also pretty influential in the season. But pretty much Coach Pruden could be quite happy with this team. The offense is pretty shared all around. And
Coach Pruden did win Coach of the Year from the CIS, from the RSEQs, rather. So that's also great for him. What about the men's team?
So the men's team under Coach John Doerr actually had a worse season than they did the last 2 years. The last 2 years, we come to expect the Stingers team, men's team, that would dominate the entire RSEG conference, make the nationals with no problem.
So what do you think they have to do going forward now to improve on this performance, I guess you can say, from this year?
Well, basically, injuries were a big major factor of this year. One of the star players, Kyle Desmarais, was out for half the season. Evans LaRoche was hurt, missed a few games as well. Really, if they had a healthy team, probably for the entire season, it would have been a much different story. They wouldn't have finished with 7 losses like they did this year.
Well, we'll see what happens next year going forward. Obviously, going to be some new recruits coming in, and hopefully they won't be as unlucky as they were this season. Moving on to the next story, Kevin, what do we got?
Well, basically, we got the wrestling team who just picked up, won some gold medals at the CIS National Championships in London, Ontario. David Tremblay was one of the stars on the team, and he, of course, as expected, picked up the gold medal. Andrew, what do you think about that?
Well, David Tremblay is an Olympic athlete, one of the best wrestlers in this country. Unfortunately, didn't have the Olympic performance that he wanted to in 2012. But made the school proud. It's his 5th consecutive gold medal in his 5 years of eligibility. Only the 3rd person in the CIS record books who can say that. He's also the first Concordia athlete to win 5 gold medals in his 5 years of eligibility. That's coming from the Stingers press release. Jordan Steen also won Rookie of the Year, so an up-and-coming name to look forward to going forward down the road. And on the women's side, Linda Moret was the lone Concordia entry in the women's contest, and she won a gold medal in the 63 kilo. So Concordia Wrestling always flies under the radar, but always tends to come home with some of the biggest awards across the country, especially in national championships where, the attention is greater, but you wonder how many people are actually paying attention. And it's unfortunate that, names like Tremblay, names like Steen, and names like Morey don't get the attention that, let's say, some of the hockey players or the football players do at Concordia.
Do you think having an athlete like David on the team will just raise the profile of the wrestling and the whole program at Concordia? Do you think it'll inspire more kids?
It definitely has. It definitely has so far. I mean, Tremblay had a lot of support going into the Olympics. A lot of people actually had extremely high expectations of him. It's not like he let anyone down. He did a great job. It was unfortunate that he didn't go farther than he could have in the tournament. That being said, it's great for the school. I think it's fantastic that we have an athlete that we can rally around, especially on the biggest stage worldwide in athletics. So we wish David nothing but the best going forward, and I'm sure he has something to say about the Olympics being taken out of the Olympics after the 2020 games. But that's a story for another day. Let's move on to our next topic. Indoor soccer at Concordia. Obviously soccer, the beautiful game, the most popular sport in the world, and of course here in Montreal, a big story all the time. But let's focus on the Stingers soccer team first. Kevin, you are the soccer guru. Tell us about the indoor soccer playoffs coming up.
Of course, yeah. So the indoor soccer season, which mostly regarded as kind of like a preseason tune-up for the actual fall season that comes a few months later. But yeah, it's wrapping up. Every team is guaranteed a playoff berth, a playoff game. So the Stingers, the women's team, will be facing fourth place Laval, who they actually just lost 7-0 to in their last match. Concordia finished the season with 2 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. Not bad for the Stingers in this opening the winter season. The men's team.
Any names we should be looking forward to in these playoffs and maybe going into next season? Like you said, it is a tune-up for the outdoor season, I guess you want to call it that. What name should we be looking towards to make an impact in these playoffs and next year?
Well, basically, Coach George Sanchez is quite lucky. He has pretty much the same squad as the fall season, playing right now in the winter. So striker Jennifer Duff has been pretty much leading the offense for the team. She's one of the top goal scorers in the RSEC, maybe even the whole country. Constantly getting game MVP awards. But also, the core of the squad is way better than it was in the past few seasons. The midfield looks a lot more sharp. The center midfielders, a lot stronger. They know what they're doing. They know how to create plays, and they also know how to defend. And the back line also looks a lot more organized.
And let's move on to the men's side. What do you got there?
Basically, the men have a tough trip to Trois-Rivières. They will face UQTR, who finished third place this year with 3 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. And the men's team finished with 2 wins and 4 losses. One of the wins came against former first place team, the Montreal Carabins. Stingers actually won that game 2-0 with Andrew Bryan scoring 2 goals in that game.
Andrew Bryan had a pretty big impact this year, wouldn't you say? How would you rate his performance, and what about any other names that we should know about on the soccer team?
Basically, Bryan was the player they were missing from the previous seasons. He's a natural striker, basically capable of scoring from anywhere on the field. No, he's a threat no matter where he is, in the box, in the air, with the ball at his feet. But he's exactly the type of player head coach now, Greg Sutton, needs on his team. But also collectively now, the team's played a few more years together. New players coming in, all have played in their summer teams, their own clubs. Most of them all played together anyways.
Sorry to cut you off. Here's an interesting question I'm going to throw your way. Like you said, Greg Sutton, for those who didn't know, is a new coach of the Concordia Stingers, taking over from Mr. Lloyd Barker. Both have ties with the Montreal Impact, who obviously are a Major League Soccer team now. Is there any way, I'm not sure if there's anything going on right now, that you see some professional sports teams make connections, or whatever you want to call it, with their local amateur teams? Is there anything going on between the Stingers or even other schools like McGill, like UDM, with the Impact in terms of player development, in terms of scouting, in terms of anything along those lines?
Well,
and if there isn't, what could they do?
Well, right now, the Stingers are fortunate. Their last 2 coaches have been Montreal former players. Greg Sutton being the latest. He was playing last summer. He just retired recently. Lloyd Barker, who's still regularly in contact with the team. Him and Greg are great friends, so they constantly talking about the team. Lloyd Barker himself was at the head of the program for quite a few years, and obviously moved on to for a broadcasting role. But Stingers players are fortunate. Having players who actually know what it's like to play professionally. Players, talking to players all the time, they actually love having Greg as a coach. He knows what he's talking about, and that's exactly what the Stingers need. around the league. Well, you have coaches that are all part of some coaches that are not professionals, but they have been part of Quebec, the federation. They're high up coaches in the ranks, but I think Concordia are actually one of the most fortunate teams behind the bench. So we heard a few weeks ago that athletic director Katie Sheahan will be retiring at the end of May, Andrew.
Yeah, Katie Sheahan leaving her post after 10 years with the school had a major role in bringing some developments and some changes to we have the 2 outdoor fields now with the dome. We have the new gym, the new complex where there's some good athletic therapy centers and a lot of improvements from, let's say, when she started in terms of player development, player health, and also not just for players themselves, but for people in general. People come to the Perform Center for treatment, for physio, for stuff like that. So definitely had an impact here. There are no names that have come up so far in terms of replacements. We'll keep you posted on that. Hopefully by next week we'll have some news on that. But we wish Katie all the best going forward as she moves on to, retirement. Unless she's moving on to something else. Who knows? Maybe she's going to...
Yeah, we definitely wish all the best.
Yeah.
It was pretty good to hear in her 10-year career.
An excellent speaker. A couple of times in the interview, always got some great answers out of her in terms of stories for the Concordia newspaper and other publications. But she'll definitely be missing Concordia, and it'll be interesting to see who takes her post and if there will be pressure on the next person in terms of actual on-field performance, especially on the football side. We saw this year that it was a lot of turmoil with the football team with ineligible players, with some inconsistency on the field, and a lot of times the athletic director is the one who has to take, not a stand per se, but has to do something to improve the overall quality of play on the field, because the athletic director is the one who, for the most part, isn't necessarily doing the hands-on recruiting, but has to give the program a sense of
direction.
Right. You want to give people a reason to come to your school, and I'm not saying Katie Sheahan didn't do that, but you see, especially on the football side, which is essentially the most popular university sport, especially in Quebec, it's growing every year. It's getting bigger and bigger with CSHEP teams and university teams, and we saw this year that Concordia seemed to take a step back. So that might be one place where the new AD will have to take a look at what needs to be improved upon. But for now, we just have to see who actually ends up coming in, and we'll definitely know that in the near future.
And that concludes our Stinger segment of the show. Now we'll be talking about the professional sports teams. The Habs, can they keep up their point streak?
We'll also be talking about Champions League Soccer, MLS, and the rest of professional sporting world. Keep it tuned in, or don't turn off the podcast, or else we'll come find you and eat you.
I'm gonna pop some tags. Only got $20 in my pocket. I'm hunting, looking for a come up. This is fucking awesome. Now, walk into the club like, what up? I got a big pack.
Welcome back. It's time to talk about our professional sports. Obviously, no bigger story than the Montreal Canadiens right now, who are topping the Eastern Conference, Andrew. They're on a pretty good point streak right now.
Yeah, 11 games in a row with at least a point in each game, a record of 8-0-3. The latest one coming in a win against the Boston Bruins, which has caused a bit of a ruckus in Boston, but that's okay. The Bruins fans can cry and complain all they want. The Canadiens are on top of the Eastern Conference. The Bruins do have games in hand to catch up, but they'll have to win those games to get back to the top of the conference. The Canadiens, the big question is, can they keep it up going forward? What do you think, Kev? Do you think the Canadiens can keep this pace for the rest of the year?
To be honest, coming into this half season, or whatever you want to call this, lockout season, I had the lowest expectations for the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, they were one of the worst teams last year. By the people they picked up, I mean, to be honest, nothing really impressed me. I mean, going in with two young kids, who knew they would be Brendan Gallagher and Galchenyuk would be this good? To be honest, I don't think anyone expected it. But really, I had low expectations for the team. They're in first place, good for them. But hopefully, do you think they'll keep it? I don't know if they'll keep it up.
Well, look, just the fact that it is a shortened season leads me to believe that, after 25 games or whatever it's been, almost 25 games, the Canadiens have shown that they can play this style of play for an extended period of time at a high level. That being said, there's two things that have to, continue to be consistent, or a couple things actually. one, they have to continue to avoid injury. I know Rene Burke and Rafael Diaz are out with concussions, but those guys have been playing well. But it's not like you're saying you're losing Carey Price or Thomas Plekanec or Andrei Markov or PK Subban. You know what I mean? So none of the big core players have been lost to injury yet. Knock on wood that doesn't happen anytime soon, because if that does happen, one of those guys goes down and you're in a situation where, like the Ottawa Senators, you lost your best defenseman, your starting goalie got injured, you're going to start sliding down the standings. The second thing, the two young guys, Galchenyuk has cooled down a little bit, but Brendan Gallagher has really turned it on in the last couple of games. You can see that he's getting more and more comfortable in his role as an agitator, but also as a scorer. And it was mentioned on the radio on TSN 690 a couple days ago that Eric Cole trade for Michael Ryder, which everyone was lauding Marc Bergevin for the trade. When you look back now and you see that, Michael Ryder's only been here for a few games, he still has to get comfortable with the system. But the main thing was to move Cole out and to move Gallagher up the lineup, and you see the dividends paying off.
Definitely, we definitely do that.
With Gallagher's play.
Who do you think is responsible for this Habs success? Is it new players brought in? Is it the new coach Michel Therrien, or is it Bergevin, the new GM?
It's got to be from the top down. I mean, you got to start with Jeff Molson and Serge Savard finding the right guy in Marc Bergevin, bringing him in. Then Bergevin, taking on the chin. Really, I mean, he was pretty harsh. I wouldn't say harshly criticized, because he did have that honeymoon period where you bring in a new GM after what Pierre Gauthier did to this team, and you say, okay, we'll give him a benefit of the doubt. He brings in Michel Therrien. People are a bit scratching their heads.
Bringing back a former coach.
Right, yeah. And especially Therrien, of all people, who wasn't exactly leaving the city on good terms when he was fired.
Well, he was successful in Pittsburgh, so it couldn't be that bad.
No, he definitely was, but people were expecting, he went to the media, and you heard some of the comments he would make on Antichambre, and people were saying, well, if he brings that mentality to the team...
It's going to be another tough year.
Exactly. But he's done incredible. He's definitely up there for Coach of the Year, along with Paul McLean in Ottawa and Joel Quenneville in Chicago, who we'll get to in a minute. But and then you have to give credit to the players. I mean, the guys who were there last year have stepped up their game. They have a reason to play again. They're playing like they want to be there. They're playing for their team, their coach. They're playing for the crest on their jersey. They're playing like they're proud to be Montreal Canadiens. That's something that's been missing from this franchise for the last little while. I mean, they did have that 1 year where they finished in first place, but other than that, this team has been pretty mediocre in the sense that they've always been fighting for a playoff spot. And it looks like this year, even if they don't finish in first, they'll be up there in the top 4 or 5 teams in the conference and do have a shot at the Stanley Cup. We'll get to the playoffs when the playoffs come around. Let's not count our eggs before they hatch. But around the NHL, anything else has impressed you, Kev? I mean, the Blackhawks have been on a torrid pace lately. What do you think about that?
Well, to be right now in this day and age of the NHL and have no losses to your name, even if it's a shortened season, still 22 games without one loss. That says something. I mean, they do have 3 OT losses or shootout losses. But, to have 19 wins at this point of the season, they are, right now, looking at the standings, they are 9 points ahead of the second-place team, that's a lot. And not obviously, I'm used to soccer where you go up by 3 points, but in hockey, that's at least 4 games, which is quite a nice margin to have going into the second half of this.
Definitely in a class of their own. And you mentioned soccer. Let's get right into it. You are the soccer guru on this podcast. Let's talk Champions League soccer. Round of 16, second leg starts today. Big game today. Manchester United, Real Madrid, Ronaldo, Rooney. I don't know who else is playing, but you can get on that.
It's definitely one of the highlights of the round 16 legs. Of course, this is the second legs that are kicking off today, tomorrow, and as well as next week. Real Madrid obviously headlined this match. They go into Manchester after a 1-1 draw at home. So right now, United has the 1 away goal advantage. But considering Real Madrid's form with 2 straight wins against Barcelona for the Copa del Rey and now in the La Liga this weekend, if I'm Alex Ferguson, the United manager, I would be kind of scared. But, they're playing at home. It's going to be definitely one to watch, one you can't miss.
So you have your big teams. You have, the Italian giant Juventus. You have Barca. You have Real Madrid. You have Manchester United. Is there a surprise team that we should be looking forward to making maybe a little run in this Champions League? I mean, Celtic has been the attention of everyone.
In the group stage they were, but right now they got handed a nice loss by Juve, so I really don't think Celtic are going to progress to the next round. But smaller clubs, I'd say, I am Portuguese. Obviously, they're not my team, though, but FC Porto they do have a good chance of going to a few rounds more deep in this competition. It looks like they will beat Malaga in this round. They already have 1 win against them. They should be able to go into Malaga and cruise to there. And Juventus, I think it was Chiellini just said it, or Buffon from Juventus just said it earlier this week that if they progress, they want to avoid a team like Porto because they could cause some upsets. So that'd be my dark horse kind of thing.
So who's the favorite in the tournament? Is it Juventus, who had a great season in Serie A, or is it another team, one of the Spanish teams maybe, or one of the English teams that have been playing well this season?
Yeah, you got your usual suspects in Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United. But obviously now these guys are all paired together. I mean, Real is playing Manchester United, so one of them is going to be eliminated.
Right.
Barca's playing Milan. And Milan actually just won 2-0 in the first leg, so Barca are really on thin ice right now. If they progress, they're going to need a massive game next week. And considering the form they're in, I don't know if they can do it. Messi's been disappeared the last 3 games, hasn't been doing much, to be honest. And so right now, the favorites, I would say, would be, considering the form, are Real Madrid. Bayern Munich is also a top team. They're going to get by Arsenal, no problem. So I'd be Bayern maybe, Real Madrid. Those are definitely my 2 interesting teams.
Can't forget those German teams. Let's bring it back on the other side of the pond. MLS starting up this weekend. The Montreal Impact with a 1-0 win against the Seattle Sounders on Saturday night. What do you think of the Impact's chances this season? What are the expectations going forward? And who should we be looking out for on the team to make an impact this season?
Pun intended right there. But yeah, basically the Impact, the MLS season kicked off. For the Impact, it's their second season playing in the top flight of North America. Coming into the season, to be honest, player-wise, they signed a good Andrea Pisanu, who came on loan from Bologna. Andres Romero coming from a smaller Brazilian club. But the biggest signing was the coach, Marco Schallibaum. They got rid of, in November or late October, Jesse Marsh after his first season. Which is kind of unexpected. A lot of people didn't go down well.
I was definitely surprised.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like that because Jesse Marsh, we've done interviews with him. I like him a lot as a person. He was he was always so open to the media, to everybody, his players, well respected. But at the end of the day, Joey Saputo, Nick DeSantis, they have a vision. And considering the players they have, I agree with it. I mean, they should be a playoff team. They weren't last year, even though it's their inaugural season. But you don't want to use that word. But this season, looks to be a lot better, considering their style of play.
Well, this is a huge year for the Impact, in my opinion, based on the fact of what you just said. Last year, they wanted to avoid that tag of expansion team. They didn't want to use that as an excuse for whatever happened that last year. And they did a good job of it because they did make a run near the end to almost make the playoffs. It didn't work out.
They struggled early, but by the end of the season, they were up there with they were like the other teams in the league.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Those early struggles eventually sunk them. And you see that a lot in sports where teams start off slow and then they pick it up once they figure everything out. But it's too little, too late. Now this year, especially the fact that they got rid of their coach, they brought some new players in, and they gave another year to the Italian guys.
The core squad is actually going to have a full season from the start.
So if they don't make the playoffs this year, that'll be a huge disappointment in my opinion. And the fact that this team is still new, the fact that it's a new professional team coming into the city after we lost the Expos, this is their chance to take their stake in the Montreal sports scene. If they don't make the playoffs this year, or let's look down the road even further, next year, and they start to become a team that struggles, that can't really do much like the Expos did, then they're going to be in trouble. I know Joey Saputo has deep pockets, but winning is what's going to put people in the seats. The only team that can afford losing in this city is the Montreal Canadiens. We all know that.
Yeah, exactly.
And if the Impact don't make the playoffs this year or have a struggle for most of the year,
people are going to be on their backs.
People are going to start jumping off that bandwagon really quickly. So hopefully, for their sake, they do well, and I think they will do well. And based on what we've talked about,
and I think really they will expect. Well, not just season, but in the future as well. I mean, coming into the MLS, Montreal is an attractive city to play football
definitely,
in.
Definitely.
I mean, look at it. You're attracting players. Marco Di Vaio already. Alessandro Nesta. Who thought that we would have got Nesta in their first season? It did end up happening, so you could tell right away. Montreal's right up there. If I were coming from a European player from the MLS, obviously Montreal would be a good city. New York, Los Angeles, that sort of cities where people will go to.
Let me just ask you one more quick question before we move on to our next topic. David Beckham leaving for Paris Saint-Germain. What does that do for the league?
To be honest, it takes a bit of a hit. Because the MLS is known as Beckham's league for the last few seasons. Right. But now, last year he was still a pretty good player. But obviously, I don't think it'll affect it that much. You still have some quality players in the league. The league's at a point now where it's not just considered just a low, little, who cares league. People in Europe are talking about it. It still doesn't have the respect maybe it should, But I mean, it won't impact too much the league.
Is there one player who takes over that reign as king of the league, or is it a couple of players that will become the face of the marketing efforts of the MLS?
Well, every time they bring the MLS brings in or one of the teams bring in a quality player from Europe, they become almost like the face because that's who everyone recognizes right away.
Right.
So obviously Thierry Henry coming over from Barca a few years ago, he becomes now the top dog in the league. But you also have guys from the Impact, stuff like that. There's a couple of other European players going to the West Coast. Robbie Keane is on the Galaxy. So I mean, I think the MLS are fine and they're definitely on the right track. So right now we'll toss it up to the other football, the one played with the hand. Andrew, so what's going on? Free agency is starting up.
Yeah, free agency starting on March 12th, exactly a week from today, and there's a lot of big names still out there. A lot of teams didn't sign their big free agents. The biggest name at wide receiver, Mike Wallace of the Pittsburgh Steelers. A burner on the outside, a guy who can take the top off the defense, cause some nightmare matchups for other teams. You have some offensive linemen who are up there. And it's interesting this year because offensive linemen, whenever they hit free agency, the problem with that is you're getting a guy who's at a depreciated value. You're paying for what the guy has done. And I mean, that kind of applies for everyone in free agency. Anytime you're overpaying for a player, you're basing it on what he did the season before. You see a lot of times that teams will shell out huge dollars for a player who had one solid statistical season. They want to make a big splash. They want to make some noise in free agency. They pay this guy a bunch of money, and then he flops. He does nothing in the next couple of years. And the most dangerous position to do that in is offensive linemen because those guys take a beating on every single play. And what you're going to see this year is that these offensive linemen, most of them want $9 million, $10 million, $11 million, especially the tackles, the left tackle and the right tackle. Most of the time, well, obviously one of the two.
They're going to get that money?
Right. Well, this year, that's what I mean. This year, maybe not because there's a lot of good offensive linemen in the draft where you can get these guys cheap, where you're not going to pay upwards of $8, $9, $10 million, especially against your salary cap when you want to fill out a solid roster. You're not gonna spend all that money on a position that isn't going to score touchdowns for you.
Which team do you think is going to do the most damage this offseason?
Well, there's a couple of teams that did make the playoffs last year that do have a lot of spending money. The Cleveland Browns come to mind. They might be in the Mike Wallace sweepstakes. The Miami Dolphins have a lot of cap space. There's other teams that are making room now to make one or two acquisitions to make a run for the playoffs. A couple teams that I find interesting, especially at the running back position, the Atlanta Falcons let go of Michael Turner, who had over 800 yards rushing last year, kind of slowed down from what he used to produce on the field. You also have the Detroit Lions, who had an amazing passing attack last year with Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford, but had no running game. Javid Best got injured, didn't play, concussion problems. They couldn't find someone to fill that void. There's a couple of big-name running backs in free agency who can come in and make an impact, especially on a passing team, and in the draft as well. So we'll see what happens, and that's the thing. The free agency obviously affects what teams are going to do in the draft. You see all these mock drafts coming out these days, and but depending on what players sign with what teams,
you don't know it until
exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. There might still be some more movement coming forward.
Let's
toss it up to the NBA.
Miami Heat dominating right now.
Kevin, I saw you the other day dropping some Blake Griffin-style dunks in the trash can. What do you have to say about yourself there?
Yeah, basically, I mean, I'm just getting ready for my intro to the NBA.
Just swagging out,
only a few years away, I think, to be honest.
Ladies in the atrium, eh?
Exactly.
So let's talk Miami Heat basketball. The Miami Heat 7 games up on the second-place team in the conference, Indiana Pacers. They've been on a 15-game winning streak. LeBron James is playing the best basketball of his career.
Do you think he's going to win MVP this year?
I think it's a foregone conclusion. I think they should just make another award called MVP not named LeBron because it's not fair. All these other guys, Kevin Durant, Tony Parker, they've all had great years. And any other season where LeBron wasn't there, it'd be a legitimate conversation for who should win the MVP.
Well, no, it'd always be Kobe Bryant.
That's true, but Kobe's playing on a bit of the
guy's always
Lakers team.
He's in his mid-30s and he's still hitting 40 bucks a game.
He's turning back the clock every once in a while. But the Miami Heat, Kev, do you think that, we see a lot of times the favorite during the regular season, they go into the playoffs, and everyone's expecting them to, destroy everyone on their way to a title. Do you think that's the same thing for the Heat, especially considering they won the title last year? They've been playing a lot of basketball in the last 2 years. Yeah,
they're definitely going to be obviously the favorites going in the Eastern Conference, but there are some teams, the New York Knicks have been always right there. They've been a lot better this year as well. And you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see, even though I don't like really these the Raptors, I never really did, but I would actually like to see them sneak into the playoffs, especially with their new team with Rudy Gay.
Definitely, they're going to need to make a huge run to get in. I'll give you some Western teams that you might have to look out for going into the playoffs. Obviously, you have the Thunder, who are the obvious favorite, especially with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook playing at a high level as usual.
You got the Spurs, the Clippers.
But Tony Parker did get injured. He's out for 46 weeks. That shouldn't affect them too much. He should be back for the playoffs. The team that we got to watch out for is the Los Angeles Clippers. That team has risen from the ashes with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Mm-hmm. And personally, I would love to see LeBron against Chris Paul and the Clippers in the final. That'd be an entertaining final that I would sit down and watch.
I'm still hoping the other LA team gets in there. I mean, it was always my team, my childhood team, so they're only one spot outside the playoffs.
You never know. You never know what happens. Once you make the dance, anything is possible.
Exactly.
Our final professional sports topic of the day, Major League Baseball in spring training. What do you got, Kev?
Yeah, early season expectations. Obviously, in Canada, we're just listening to the Blue Jays. I mean, they made some great signings, but realistically, do you think they have a chance still in the toughest division? I would say in probably all of North American sport with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Rays.
My opinion might be unpopular, especially in Toronto, maybe in this city, maybe in this country, since it's the only team. I don't think the Blue Jays will even make the playoffs, and I'll tell you why. The Baltimore Orioles, yeah, they had a good year last year. They might fall back a little bit, but they're still a contender in that division. The Tampa Bay Rays are always overlooked because, quite frankly, no one cares about Tampa Bay Rays in Tampa Bay.
Well, aren't they? They're on and off every season. One season they're absolutely amazing. The next season they can go and being one of the worst teams in the division.
But you can never discount David Price and Evan Longoria, the two best players on that team and possibly in the division. And then you have the Yankees and the Red Sox, and maybe they haven't done as much as they have in the past this season. But the Red Sox do have a new manager in John Farrell. Let's see what he can do there. He might have some better direction than Bobby Valentine did last year. And the Yankees, you can never discount the Yankees, the evil empire. They have money to spend, they have money to blow, and they'll blow it on whatever they need to blow it on.
Probably younger players.
To get those players in there. Old. Yeah, definitely. But I'm going to go with, we're going to do our predictions real quick. I'm going to say the Los Angeles Dodgers as my World Series team.
Why the Dodgers?
Why Dodgers? Well, they did make that big trade last year. They picked up Adrian Gonzalez. They picked up Nick Punto. They picked up Josh Beckett. Their pitching is stellar. Beckett, Zach Greinke, they signed the offseason. Clayton Kershaw, Billingsley, a couple of solid guys in the bullpen, some veteran experience in Ted Lilly and Aaron Harang. I think that team is going all the way. You can never discount the Giants.
Defending the defending World Series champion.
Pitching gets you through the playoffs. I'm going to stick by that mantra the whole season. And that brings me back to the Blue Jays. I think that Dickey's going to take a step back from last year. He's facing a better hitting league as opposed to the batters he faced in the National League. And the two Marlins players have been a bit inconsistent that they picked up. Jose Reyes will be good, but the minute that team hits any injuries, they're in trouble.
Do you even think they'll even make the wild card or even come close to that?
No, I think this team is going to be fiercely disappointing this year. I'm sorry to say that, Toronto fans, but that's just my opinion. If I'm right, you can carry me on your shoulders down Yonge Street, and we'll have a parade of our own.
That sounds like a plan. All right, we conclude the show with the Harlem Shake. It's finally... I mean, to most people, it's been probably going on a bit too long.
And you hear that sick tune in the background.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll dance with it every time, to be honest.
We're dancing in the studio right now, to be honest with you guys. You probably don't want to see it because we're pretty insane dancers. But basically what we're going to do with the podcast is every week we'll have a little random story that's related to sports to bring up at the end. Just have a little fun with it. And this week we figured, why not go with the most popular...
And the ones we like the most. Which team did it the best?
We broke it down. We did a lot of hours of research and analysis, and we came up with two teams that did it best. Kev, who did you have?
For me, obviously, I'm gonna go with the soccer. Manchester City was the first team in the world of soccer to actually take this, make it a famous. Well, I mean, it was already famous, but they were the first ones to actually do the idea. They did it after a training session. I saw the behind-the-scenes videos, and honestly, it looked hilarious. Every player was hilarious, especially Kolarov being just big and massive like he is. But no, I think credit goes to them being the first ones in the soccer world to do it, and it paid off, and it actually worked. It wasn't something embarrassing.
I'm gonna stay on this side of the
Atlantic.
I will stay in North America. I'll go down south to South Beach.
Miami.
The Miami Heat can do it on the floor, and they can do it on the dance floor. And they did a great Harlem Shake video. I love LeBron James in the middle. One. Yeah, you have Birdman coming up the middle. Everyone's not really paying attention, and all of a sudden, everyone starts breakout dancing. You got Chris Bosh, in his bathrobe with his old man stereo. You got Mario Chalmers dressed up as Super Mario. You got some guys with a UFC belt.
Definitely.
But you got King James right in the middle with the throne, with the
being the king. That's what
he
he's
looked
doing.
like a bit of a pimp king, which might give the wrong image to children.
But he pretty much is. So.
But he did a great job, and I like the fact that they had little solo dancing at the end, like the Raptors did. The Raptors had a good one too, but the Raptors don't have the star power that the Miami Heat do.
All right.
That's it. We're done. Time's up. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast. Eventually, we'll have right now, it is a working title. Eventually, we'll have an actual name for the podcast.
It's coming.
We will talk to you next week, and we wish you
all the best for the week. Hopefully, the Stingers. Big news coming. I'm Kevin Duarte.
We're done. I'm shooting for 3. Kobe!
Remember, kids, you can't have fun if you don't win.
Stay classy, Montreal.
There you have it, guys. Don't forget to check out our new website where we'll be posting regular contents about every sports, Stingers sports, whatever interests us, whatever's going on in the world. Check it out. What's the website, Andrew?
The website is dmsportsmedia.blogspot.ca.
If you want to reach us, maybe you want to contribute to the website, write about what you think.
Maybe you want to tell us how great we are.
Exactly.
You can email us
What's the email?
Duarte Maggio sportsmedia@gmail.com. Duarte is spelled Duarte. Maggio's Maggio.
And of course, we are huge social media addicts. We all have Twitter.
I have more followers than Kevin, just putting it out there.
Barely. Anyways. What's our show Twitter?
Our show's Twitter account is Duarte Maggio SM at the moment, but that's subject to change, so stay tuned. My Twitter account is at AJMag19, and Mr. Duarte, you want to tell them what yours is?
Yes, DuarteK27. Make sure you follow that. Post tweets almost daily. You can unfollow Andrew. He's really not that important.
You can unfollow me, and I'll still have more followers than Kev. See you guys next week.